Hi everyone, Miss Sen here with you today to teach you how to make bread. So the very first thing that we need to do is prepare ourselves ready for practical or mise en place. We're going to wash our hands, we're going to sanitize and clean our surfaces. We should have our hair up and be wearing an apron, because an apron will prevent two things. Prevent cross-contamination of bacteria from your clothes into the food, and also prevents flour and dough getting into your clothes. Now we'll also need to preheat our oven to 200 degrees centigrade or gas mark 7. Now we need to prepare our ingredients, and I'll have them on the screen for you now. So, for this recipe you will need 300 grams of a strong bread flour. Plain flour won't really do in this instance. You can use either a strong white flour or a strong brown flour. In this case I've actually got 150 grams of each. I'm doing a 50-50 roll. You'll need 1 teaspoon of yeast. Dry active yeast is a great option, or you can use a sachet of dry yeast. You'll need a little bit of sugar to help the fermentation process. Need half a teaspoon of sugar to get the yeast going. And then you'll need between half and 1 teaspoon of salt, which is purely for flavour, otherwise bread doesn't taste like an awful lot. If you wish to add some additional flavourings, you could use something like dried oregano, dried chives, your personal preference for herbs. And if you don't have the individual ingredients, you could always try a packet bread, which is a really great option because it has everything in there for you and makes a beautiful loaf or a variety of rolls. So we're going to add all the dry ingredients into a large bowl now. We'll come back to the water in just a minute. So I've added my dry ingredients to my bowl. I've mixed the sugar and the salt into the flour to really mix it in before I'm adding the yeast. The reason for this is that salt will actually kill yeast if it comes in direct contact. As long as the flour is in there to buffer it, it's absolutely fine. So now I can add the yeast in and again give that a really good mix until everything is uniform and combined. Now we're going to add our water. We need 200 millilitres and it needs to be nice and warm, like bath water. In order to make sure that it is warm enough to really activate the yeast and to speed up the proving process, I'm actually going to start with 100 millilitres of cold water from the tap, and I'm going to add 100 millilitres of boiling water from the kettle. Now I've got a little more than 200 here, which will just see me over just in case, but hopefully we shouldn't even need all of that water. So what I'm going to do is make a well in the middle of my flour, and I'm going to add my water a little at a time. Okay? Do not add it all in at once. What I like to do is I like to have one dirty hand and one clean hand, otherwise I'm going to get dough all over my jug. So I'm going to mix it in little by little. You can see it's starting to get lumpy already. That is lovely and warm. It's good fun, this. Okay, there we go. Going to keep adding. Now the consistency we're looking for is actually on the wet side of a sticky dough. It's difficult to tell the first time. It takes practice, but you want to start it stickier than you'd think, and wetter than you'd think. A lot of people will start with their dough too dry, and although it might look a bit more like the dough you might want to actually end up with, the texture is never as good as when you start with it more sticky. So you can see I've got a little water left. I'm going to mix in there. Might even need a little more. Now if you're using white flour, you'll probably need less water than if you're using a brown flour. The fibre in the brown flour, in this strong brown flour, the wholemeal flour, will actually absorb more water. So I reckon I'm going to need a little more than 200 today, because I made a 50-50 roll. So we're getting there. I'm going to add a little more, slowing down. What I don't want to do is add too much. Now we get to that point where it starts to sound really squidgy. Yeah, it's starting to get there. I'm really trying to massage it as well in the bowl. I want a nice even consistency. Now that already looks quite sticky, but what I'm actually going to add a tiny fraction more. Be surprised. Just a few drops. And I reckon this is now going to be about perfect. That feels about right. That is warm and elastic and sticky. That is where we should be for our dough. So here comes the fun part. Now we're going to get to kneading. So once we're happy with our consistency, I'm going to move my bowl. And I can just work on my surface, but I might just want to add a little bit of flour just to stop it sticking. What you don't want to do is add too much though, because you've got a beautiful sticky dough at the moment. If you add too much flour, it's going to dry it out. So the method for kneading. You're going to use the fleshy part of your hand back here, at the back of your palm, and you're going to push out like so, and you're going to roll back and then turn it 90 degrees. Now I'm right-handed, but if I did all my kneading with my right hand and my right shoulder, I'm going to get very tired very quickly. So I'm actually going to swap each time. Right, left, left. So I'm going to push out with the fleshy part, stretch it out. I'm going to roll it back and turn it 90 degrees. Out, back, 90 degrees. Out, back, 90 degrees. Out, back, 90 degrees. I'm going to speed up. Like so. Already I can feel it starting to get a little bit smoother. See, I'm not adding any more flour. If it really starts to stick to the surface, I could add a little more, but probably shouldn't need it. Just a tiny sprinkle will do. And I'm going to knead this for a long time. I'm going to knead it for 10 minutes, okay? 10 minutes. Some people will knead it for 15 minutes, and if you're making a wholemeal flour bread, loaf or roll, you'll probably need to knead it for a little bit longer. Now, if you find that a little bit of a struggle, you can do a two-handed kneading method. That's how my grandmother has kneaded her bread all these years. You can use the fleshy part from both hands. You can push out and back and turn. Out and back and turn. Out and back and turn. It's completely your preference. Now, what's the purpose of kneading? Well, we want to stretch the gluten. Gluten is a protein inside the wheat. I often use the metaphor of blowing up a balloon. If you've ever tried to blow a balloon without having stretched it first, you'll find it so much harder. As soon as you go to stretch that lovely rubber, stretch it out, it's so much easier to fill it with air. Now the yeast, of course, are going to give off carbon dioxide. So if we go back to the metaphor of the balloon, bread is basically like thousands and thousands of tiny little balloons, nice and stretchy, kind of elastic, capturing the carbon dioxide. If we don't have stretchy balloons, the carbon dioxide will either just be released or it won't really have an opportunity to expand. So we're going to keep kneading this, and I'll see you back in 10 minutes. It's been 10 minutes and my dough is beautifully soft and elastic and smooth and ready to be shaped and proved. I've got my baking tray here. I'm going to flour it with a little flour, dust it with a little flour. There we go. If you've got a flour dredger, you'll find this process even easier. Make sure you do cover the entire surface, because if it's touching the tray anywhere, it will stick. I'm going to place it to one side. So coming back to my dough, we're going to make 6 bread rolls. So if we think about doing a little bit of maths, we want to divide this into 2 first of all, and then into 2 lots of 3. So I'm not going to use a knife, I'm just going to take it in my hands, I'm going to twist it like so, and I'm going to break it into 2. Make sure they're about the same size. Place that one to one side. I'm going to roll this little guy out into a sausage, and I'm going to divide this again, I'm going to twist it into 3 even balls. Now if one of them is a little small and one's a little big, you can just pinch off a little bit of dough and pop them on there. And you want them until they're all about the same size. Perfect. I'm going to do that for all 6. So I've got my 6 dough balls ready to shape. I'm going to show you 3 different types of easy, simple shapes. You can do whatever shape you like if you want, but I'm going to show you some now. I'm going to put these to one side, out of the way. So for my first one, I'm going to make a simple bread roll, but I need to do it in a particular way, otherwise it's going to end up really lumpy. So I'm right-handed, I'm going to place them in my left hand, and I'm going to pull the side, and I'm going to push it into the middle. Pull into the middle, and I'm turning it as I go. Pull into the middle, pull into the middle. I'm not pulling it until it breaks, I'm just stretching the walls of the dough. I'm sort of making a little parcel, like so. And by pulling the underside, although this side looks really messy, the top side looks lovely and smooth. And I can even just round him off a little bit, like so. And he's ready to pop in my tray. This is probably my favourite one, to be honest, because although it looks really complicated, it's actually really easy. I'm going to take it. I could have a tiny bit more flour on my surface if I need to, but mine happens to be fine. I'm going to roll this little guy out, okay, just like playing with Play-Doh. Push from the middle and roll them out to the sides. And a nice long shape there, you can see. Now all I'm going to do, just like doing a shoelace, I'm going to turn it in half. And I'm going to pop this little guy through the hole, and I've made myself a knot. Brilliant! Pop him on my tray and do one more. Easy peasy. Okay, last one. So for this one, I'm going to roll it out again, just like I did my knot, but this time I'm going to pinch it off, and I'm going to turn it into 3 little sausages. Now I'm going to stretch each of the sausages out, like so. There you go, try and get them all about the same length. Okay, now you can probably guess what we're going to do. We're going to plait it. So I'm going to take the chunky ends up here. I'm going to actually squeeze the dough together so it almost becomes one again up at the top. Okay, so it's not going to come undone. Now if you've never done a plait before, what you do is you go right into the middle, left into the middle, right into the middle, left into the middle, right into the middle, left into the middle, and so on till you get to the end. And again, I'm going to really pinch it until the dough is combined. I'm actually just going to tuck those ends underneath because it will stop it from expanding outwards, like so. Let's do one more. Now make sure that you've got enough space between your bread rolls because they're going to expand, they're going to rise, and if they're too close, they're going to touch. It's not the end of the world, but you have to pull them apart and they won't have quite the same sort of surface. If you particularly want to, you could brush on a little bit of milk or a little bit of egg, and that will add to some shine. You could also dust it with a bit of extra flour, you could top it with some seeds, you could use some oats. So many things you could do, so versatile. I'm going to leave mine as it is. Now, before they go into the oven, we need to prove them. Proving allows the fermentation process to occur where the yeast is eating up all that sugar, yum 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 yum, and it's producing that carbon dioxide, farting it out as you will. And what's that going to do is it's going to cause our rolls to at least double in size. If you're lucky enough to have a grill space above your oven that isn't turned on, you can put it in there because the heat of the oven will make that chamber beautifully warm, the right temperature. If that's not the case for you, you can cover it with some cling film, or ideally a beeswax wrap, or even a tea towel. Damp tea towel will be the best. And leave it on the side in a nice warm room. You need to leave it for 20 minutes. So we'll come back in 20 minutes and we'll see if they've doubled in size. In the meantime, while it's proving, of course, this is the perfect opportunity to get your washing up done. A quick note on washing up, guys. Your dough is going to be stuck around the inside of your bowl, and you really want to try and get the worst of it off. And you don't want to use a scrubby or a sponge straight away, because all that dough will stick to that scrubby or that sponge. The best thing to do is to get yourself a brush. You get some of your hot soapy water, and you're going to really brush the worst of it off first of all. Here we go. But once you've got the worst of it off, that can go down the side of your sink. And now you can come in with a scrubby or a sponge to clean it off properly. So as you can see, they've doubled in size. They look absolutely beautiful. And in fact, because of the herbs that I added, they smell almost a little bit like pizza. Really looking forward to these. So what we're going to do now is we're going to put them in the oven for 12 to 15 minutes. If you have to swap yours with a partner, make sure that you put them in for 6 minutes, top and bottom, and then you swap them after 6 minutes, because remember, the top of the oven is always the hottest. Any that are at the bottom and left there will not cook as quickly as the ones on the top. Put them in for about 12 minutes if they need to be golden brown. If they're not golden brown after 12 minutes, pop them back in for about another 3. Okay, keep an eye on them, and I'll see you in about 12. It's been about a quarter of an hour, and we're going to check to see if our rolls are done. Well, here they are. They are beautifully golden brown. They look and they feel pretty good. And the best test is to flip them on over, and you touch the underside, you tap it. It should sound hollow. If you have a dull thump, you need to put it back in for a little bit longer, but if it sounds like a, you're good to go. Now you can either use your hands or you can use a palette knife, and you want to transfer them to the cooling rack. Like so. Now I know the temptation is to eat one straight away while they're lovely and warm, but you do need to leave them for around 10 minutes or so, because if you eat bread while it's still hot, it'll give you a very upset stomach. So try again in a minute. I've allowed them to cool for a few minutes, and you can see on the inside that they are beautifully springy and bouncy and delicious. They will stay fresh for 1 to 2 days. They'll start to get a little stale by the 3rd day. So put them in a beeswax wrap or in a container. You can put them in the bread bin, of course. But if you don't plan to eat them within a couple of days, you can pop them in the freezer. In a plastic bag is perfect, and you take them back out, let them thaw, and they will be as fresh as the day that you made them. So I hope you have enjoyed making bread with me today. I'll see you next time.